Voodoo Whiskey Gaming, and this is my late review of Gotham Knights. I play on the Xbox Series X. It's also available on the PS5 and PC. So let's get into the story. So the game opens up with Batman dying, like right out the gate. He leaves his final case to his apprentices, Nightwing, Batgirl, Robin, Tim Drake Robin, and the Red Hood. They have to track down the Court of Owls, see if it's real, and then take it down if it is. Along the way, of course, they run into other villains, Mr. Freeze, Harley Quinn, and Clayface. And there are some twists and turns throughout the story, and it's actually not a bad story. It wasn't like mind-shattering. Nothing that it did was quite as amazing as I think we all could hope it would be. So let's get into the audio. And the first thing I'm going to say is the music in this game, I can take it or leave it. It doesn't necessarily do anything for me, but it's also not necessarily horrible music. As for the voiceover work, I think it's well done. I think they do a good job bringing the different characters to life. So I don't have any major complaints there. The one thing I will really praise is I do like the sound effects in this game. I think they're well done. I think there are some really good subtle sound effects throughout, and just variations in sound effects that if you're paying attention to, you'll notice and appreciate. Now let's get into the gameplay mechanics and whatnot, and this is a third-person open-world action RPG. Being an RPG, you gain experience from combat and completing missions. And when it comes to missions, you obviously have your main missions, and then they kind of get broken down into tiers. You have your missions involving other villains, you have just all the other stuff going on, which could be stopping major crimes, premeditated crimes, you have crimes in progress, you have just all sorts of things. There's racing, there's challenges involving each of the different playable characters. You do get to play as those different characters, and you can play with a buddy to get through the campaign. There is a 4-player mode called Heroic Assault, which admittedly I couldn't care less about. And unfortunately, a lot of those missions get painfully repetitive, and the characters don't feel very different. Yeah, they each have their own little thing, but in reality, you can use them all in a very similar manner. I personally found myself using Batgirl because she's a brawler. She honestly controls the most like Batman from the Arkham series, which is why I liked her. But in reality, you can use all of the characters in a very similar manner. I mean, some of them are slightly better at range than others, but when it comes to their melee combat, there's not a huge difference there. And unfortunately, I don't feel like the combat is as deep as it could be, and just doesn't work as well as we would all hope. I hate to draw comparisons between one game and another because this isn't a part of the Arkham series, it's not in the Arkham world, but the Arkham games had such a great combat system, and this game just doesn't do much with that. With what we know and what we were used to, this doesn't do it anywhere near as well. So let's get into the controls, and the first thing I'm going to say is there are issues. There are movement issues for sure. There were definitely times, and this probably ties into maybe the way the world is built and certain things, but like getting caught in doorways, getting caught in geometry, it's the way you maneuver doesn't always feel good. And like if you do get caught in a doorway, wiggling your way out just doesn't work great. There are times where you're on ledges and you're trying to get off and the buttons just don't fucking do it. There were times in combat where I was trying to dodge and it just didn't fucking do it. The controls just aren't as responsive as they need to be. Maybe this is a mix of gameplay mechanics and controls, but it's some shit that needs serious patching. And so does the aiming for when you're using the grappling hook. That just doesn't work as well, especially when you're trying to traverse the city. The controls work, they just don't work as well as they should, considering, you know, this is a big game. Now let's get into the graphics and visuals, and I actually like the graphics and visuals in this game. There are some questionable choices in my opinion. I don't know why the Red Hood is a giant burly dude, because, you know, if you've seen him in the comics, he's not. I do understand it, because it's meant to be like visual differentiation, because you don't want him to necessarily look like, you know, too much like Nightwing or too much like current Robin, so I do understand that. I just don't necessarily love it, because Red Hood's dope. But I do like the world that they built. I do like the way Gotham looks. I thought they did a cool job making it their own, not making it feel like the Gotham we know from the Arkham series, which I think is important to help differentiate Gotham Knights. And they did other small things that I enjoy, like the amount of detail in the character costumes, and you can customize them. You can change each costume's cowl to 3 different types, gloves, boots, emblem. You can change those. As well as all the different gear you get. It doesn't necessarily look different, but there are different patterns, I will call them, or styles, I think is what they call them in the game. So Batgirl will have a bunch of different styles, and the different suits you get for her will fall under one of those styles, and then you can go in and customize those. I also like that there are characters in the game who will have different outfits throughout the game, and I think that's cool. I like that the Bat family, when they're training, they have workout gear on. When they're not training, they have other clothing on. I think stuff like that adds nice little details to the game and, you know, makes them feel more real rather than having the same outfit from start to finish. I also like other subtle details when you're riding the Bat bike, the splashes it makes, the reflections in the world are actually really impressive. As dumb as that may sound, but when you walk up to a monitor, you can actually see your character's reflection on like a computer screen. Small details like that are actually really cool to me. I think the enemy design is good enough to differentiate the different gangs and different enemies you'll run into. There is a limited variety to them, but, you know, each of your gangs have their brawlers. You can kind of pick those guys out by their outfits. They have male and female ones, but in reality, when you're beating the hell out of them, you don't have time to focus on it, so it doesn't matter immensely, but they could have put a little more into that. There are the odd visual glitches here or there involving capes mostly for me, because I was playing as Batgirl, like I said. Her cape does some weird shit at times, let's be honest. So I gotta say, overall, happy with the game visually. Okay, so this is the part where I start pissing and moaning. First off, there's the fact that this game crashed 4 or 5 times on me. That's just obnoxious as all hell. It wasn't the most devastating thing, but it did cause me to lose progress. Not hours and hours, but enough that it was an annoyance. Far worse was the fact that there were a couple of times where I was in a fight and it dropped down to like not even 1 frame per second. It was like it was going to crash, but just wouldn't. And one of the weird things I discovered in the second time that it happened to me is it's like in a zone around that fight. If you get out of it, things start to run smoothly, and if an enemy comes out there, it's fine. But that zone did follow me, and I had to move even further back. It was weird, it was awful, it shouldn't be happening, don't know why it's happening. And I will say, the first time it happened to me, it got me straight up killed. And so I lost a bunch of bonuses that I had earned on that patrol, which was very, very frustrating. And then the other issue I ran into was this game needs to understand fucking priorities, man. Because I was doing a race and I drove by one of the missions and it triggered the mission, but I was still doing the race. So this created a problem because I drove out of the mission zone because I was doing a race and it kicked me off of the motorcycle and put me on a roof. So I failed the mission because I was doing a race, and I failed the race because I failed the mission. That's dumb. If I am on an objective driving a motorcycle in a race, it shouldn't trigger any other events. Okay, so to wrap this up, even if this game had a perfect story, I mean perfect story, which, let's be clear, it does not. With all the other issues, with just how the gameplay isn't as good as it should be, with all the technical issues I had, I really couldn't recommend this game. Definitely not at full price, and definitely not until it gets a lot of patching. When you think about the fact that I started playing this game about 2 months after launch, and it's still in this state, that's kind of awful. I'll tell you right now, I got it on sale, and I'm glad I did, because had I paid full price for this, absolutely not. After some patching, and if it's on sale, I think it's a worthwhile investment. I think there is room for another game, and I would honestly enjoy another game that they've cleaned up and made better than this, quite frankly. Just put the extra time and effort into. So recommended, but after patching and on sale. Okay, so in the comments down below, why don't you tell me who's your favorite Robin? And as always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button. And if you like what I'm doing in general, share and subscribe. Have a good one.